craftygemini.com, and I post weekly crafting and cooking videos here on YouTube. Today I'm back with part 3 of my beginning sewing series, where we've been working with Simplicity pattern 2290 to make a cute pair of pants. If you're coming across this tutorial randomly, you want to make sure that you watch part 1 and 2 before getting to this video. So if you want to watch part 1, click here, or if you want to watch part 2, click here. If you guys have already cut out your fabric pieces and you're ready to start sewing, let's get started. So we're going to lay one of the fabric pieces face up, and you see I'm putting my fingers and grabbing it where I see that single notch, fold it on itself and match up the other single notch, and that's how you know they match up. So we're going to line up this raw edge nice and neatly, everything matching up, and place some pins there because we're going to be sewing along this entire edge. You're going to repeat it to the other fabric piece, and then we can look at the diagram in the instructions. It's telling you to start sewing up there and all the way down to the bottom. We're not sewing up the curved part, we're just sewing down that straight pant leg. So I'm going to my sewing machine, and the seam allowance you want to use is 5/8 of an inch, which is the general seam allowance we use in garment making. Look on your throat plate right there where you see me pointing on your machine, and look for something that says either 5/8, or if you see the number 15, that's in millimeters, which would be the equivalent. So what you want to do is line up the edge of your fabric on that guide for the 5/8 of an inch, and then make sure to backstitch at the beginning and at the end. And we're going to sew all the way down, making sure that edge of that fabric is guiding along nicely with the 5/8 inch mark. Then you want to press everything down to set that seam, and then you're actually going to open the seam up and press it again. This just gives everything a nice and neat touch. Repeat on the other fabric piece, and both your pant legs should look like that. Now you're going to take one of them and you're going to flip it inside out so that the pretty side of the fabric is facing out. Okay, so just one of them should be pretty side out and the other one should be ugly side out. Now I'm going to put my arm inside the pant leg down that center seam that you see there, and then you're going to put it through or inside of that other leg, matching up that seam as well. So I'm going to pinch it right here so that they're lining up nicely, and I'm going to straighten everything out. After I have that pant leg straightened out, I want to grab the top part, and we're actually going to be pinning now the curved ends. This is where we want to match up the other notches that we cut out of our fabric. Here you can see that we have triple notches down here. You're going to match the 3 to the 3, and that's how you know. When they match up nicely, that's how you know you're doing everything correctly. So the 3 go together, then on the other side we have the 2 notches that go together. We're going to pin all around this entire curve, and we're going to sew it the same way we did the other. I like to place a pin here on that center seam so that I know it's matching up nicely, and then just go all the way around the curved edge, pinning as you go. Go to your sewing machine, and we're using the same 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So just stitch everything down. Remember to remove those pins before you reach them. Now to reinforce the crotch seam, you're going to sew over that line that we just sewed. So we sewed once around the curved part, and then we sewed right over it again. Then you want to press the seam down again to set it, and then the same thing you did before is open up the seam and press that as well. So to start working on the next step, we want to pull the one pant leg out from the other leg, and I like to do that by just putting my hand down the pant leg and then pulling it out. And when I get to the top part, you want to push it down that other hole there, and basically you end up with a pair of pants that are just inside out. When they look like this, you're almost ready to start working on the waistband, but we first want to look on our machine for the basting stitch setting, which is basically the longest straight stitch your machine can do. And what you want to do is set it to that basting stitch, and we're going to stitch down the center seam allowance just a few inches. What that's going to do is hold down the seam allowance while we insert the elastic in the waistband, and that way the elastic won't get stuck because that seam allowance is flapping around. So just take a few stitches, maybe 2-3 inches. You don't have to backstitch at the beginning or the end because you will be pulling these stitches out later. Now to make our waistband, you want to keep the pants still inside out and fold over the top waistband part 1.5 inches. And what I like to do is kind of just eyeball it, and then I measure. And I measure in some different spots, and if it doesn't quite reach there, if it's too thick or too thin, then I'll just adjust it as I go, like you see me doing here. You want to do that all the way around, and then you're going to press that in place. Keep measuring all the way around. Sometimes I flip it over, double check on the other side, and then just press everything in place. The next step is to open up that fold that you just did, and then take the raw edge and fold it in 1/4 of an inch. I can eyeball it since I'm a quilter, and this is most of the seams that I work with, but if you want, you can take your measuring tape as well and just measure 1/4 of an inch and just press that all the way around, flip it over, do it on the other side. And then what you're going to do is fold it back on that initial fold that you made. So you can see here we don't have any raw edges anymore because we did that 1/4 of an inch tuck under into the waistband part. So press everything in place so it lays nice and flat for you to make it easy for you to sew. Now you want to just find the center marks on the ends, on the sides where the hips would be, and bend that right there and then just make a quick little mark. This is where we're going to leave a 2 to 3 inch opening to insert the elastic in the waistband casing. So just go to that mark and measure about 3 inches or so. And make sure that you mark it so that when you're sewing, you don't just sew all the way around the waistband and sew it closed. You want to leave them open because these marks are going to tell you where to start and stop stitching. Start on one end, go all the way around, and stop on the other end so that opening remains open for the elastic. Now to sew the waistband, we're going to start on one of the marks that we made, and you're just going to make sure you backstitch at that mark to secure those stitches. And there's not a seam allowance that you're using. Instead, you're just trying to stay nice and close to that folded edge towards the left side, okay, and just sew all the way down. When you come around to the end, make sure that you reach your mark and then again backstitch to secure those stitches in place. And then what you end up with is a fully sewn waistband that looks like this. Here's a quick tip for you. Make sure that you mark the back waistband section so that the wearer of these pants knows which way the pants go. Put a piece of ribbon or fabric or something there to mark it. In this project, the center seam that goes towards the back is the one with the triple notches. So make sure you put something there so you don't wear them backwards. To insert the elastic in the casing, you want to measure around your waist and then add 1 inch to that measurement and cut there. Then take a safety pin and attach it to one of the ends. Then we're going to go to the opening we left on the pants waistband, and you're going to push in that safety pin and just continue to push it all the way through and pulling on the fabric until you get the entire elastic all the way through the waistband. When you come out on the other end, then you just want to tug on the safety pin so you have both ends exposed. And then what we're going to do is remove the safety pin, and you're going to overlap these ends and then go to your machine and zigzag stitch forward and back a bunch of times just to secure that in place like this. Now to enclose that opening, you just want to fold it over and then you're going to go to your sewing machine and stitch that down in place, or you can also do it by hand. Now stretch the waistband out so you evenly distribute all that elastic, and you're almost done. To hem your pants, you want to put them on, fold the raw edge under to the point where you'd like to have them hang, and place a pin right at that fold. Then you want to take them off, careful not to pinch yourself, and measure from your pin down 1 1/4 inches. Then you place your measuring tape at that new mark and figure out how far it is down to the raw edge. In my case, it's 2 3/4 inches. What you want to do then is mark 2 3/4 inches all the way around the hem so that you know your line is going to be the same distance away from the raw edge. Continue to do this down one side, and if you have the pants folded in half, you can then just mark the entire line straight, lining up all your marks, and then cut with a pair of scissors. Now what you want to do is actually create the hem. So I'm going to fold it over like this, and I still have noticed the ugly side of the fabric is facing up, so you're doing this inside out. Then I want to measure and make sure that my hem is now at 1 1/4 inches, and you want to adjust it just like we did at the waistband. Measure it all the way around, press that in place. Then we're going to repeat what we did on the waistband. You want to continue to measure all the way on the other side of it, double check your measurements, then open up that fold again. You're going to fold down 1/4 of an inch in to conceal that raw edge and press that in place with a hot iron. Then you want to fold it back on itself on that initial fold and repress everything so it lays nice and neatly. Then you're going to go to your sewing machine, and since the pant leg is a little bit tighter than the waistband was, what you want to do if it doesn't quite fit over the body of your machine, you want to look and see if your machine has something like mine where you can remove and expose the free arm. This makes the bed of the machine a lot narrower. This is perfect for doing sleeves, especially for small children's clothing. So now we're just going to take a basic straight stitch, and again, no seam allowance. We're just making sure to stay close to that inner edge, making sure to backstitch at the beginning and at the end, and you should end up with a nice, neat looking hem like this. Before I sew down the second hem, I like to line them up with the first one and make sure that they're all even, and go ahead and sew it then. After that, you can remove the basting stitches you did on the waistband, and that's it.